Welcome everyone to our spotlight tonight. My name is Lisa Gear and I'm the Dean of Admissions at Southwestern Law School. Tonight we're going to be featuring Jeff Martin, who is a 3L in our full-time day program. So you're going to start hearing from Jeff in just a second. I also want to let you know that we're going to have two other current students who will be assisting with Q&A in the chat. We have Armand and Fabiola. Do you guys want to say a quick hello? Armand, you can go first.
Hi everyone, my name is Armand, traditional day 3L at Southwestern.
Thank you. Fabiola.
Hi everyone, my name is Fabiola. I am also traditional 3L traditional day, and I'm actually on a few boards with Jeff, so I'm sure you'll hear about that more today.
Thank you both. Okay, so questions that you have in the chat, you are welcome to post there. I will be asking Jeff some questions for our conversation tonight. And then I also want you to have an opportunity to ask questions too. Oh, I see we have another ambassador. Emily, do you want to say a quick hello too?
Hi, yeah, I'm also a traditional 3L student interested in entertainment law. If you guys have any questions in the chat.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So Jeff, why don't we begin with you telling the group a little bit about yourself, you know, how you came to wanting to go to law school, and some of the activities that you're involved in at Southwestern.
Sure, cool. I mean, I'm a traditional day 3L, that already got that out of the way. But I was a long time out from my undergrad before I came to law school. It's actually like my deep, dark secret and my number one go-to like trivia fact whenever day one of class, somebody's like, say an interesting fact about yourself. I have a theater degree. I got a BFA in acting from Cal State Fullerton, class of 2010, which I never used. It was what felt right at the time, but ultimately not what felt right for a career. So I got out, I started working. I worked in sales, like terrible, soul-crushing, awful sales. And after a few years of that, I was just, something was missing. So I got more and more involved in my community, my neighborhood. I'm in North Hollywood. I won't shut up about how much I love North Hollywood, and I've been here for the better part of a decade now. Got involved with the unhoused community up here, tried to do as much outreach as I could, met up with a great group of people that I actually met through my undergrad, so it wasn't totally wasted. And we put together a little collective to help, but it just felt like a drop in the bucket. More and more things were in the news. Right around 2016, started to pick up steam with that project, and I just decided the next step, the next tool I needed in my toolbox to help was a law degree. So I made the decision to go to law school. I came here with the express intent of becoming a public defender, and I'm going to graduate at the end of this year. I'm currently working at the alternate public defender's office right now. Over last summer, I worked at the federal defender's office, which I'm able to talk about the differences for anybody who has questions, because I worked strictly misdemeanors last summer. And with the ADP, it's heavier stuff. And then the summer before that, I was lucky enough to be able to work at the LA LGBT Center in the unhoused youth program, the homeless youth program. So I got a good smattering of everything that I wanted to touch on, to see what felt right, to see what to ultimately pursue. And I'm still committed to public defense. That's still very much the goal. At school, Fabiola mentioned that I'm on a couple boards, and if you watch the little intro video thing, I talked about it a little bit. I'm the president of the Homelessness Prevention Law Project here. I'm the co-chair of the Public Interest Law Committee and the treasurer for the National Lawyers Guild, Southwestern's chapter of the National Lawyers Guild, and I'll be speaking at their disorientation event, which is coming up in just like a month. It's in October, and that's a very leftist-oriented law group for anybody that's interested in public interest and wants to work on the more left side of public interest. I'm a public interest fellow for Southwestern's Judge Harry Ferguson Public Interest Fellowship, which is great. And the best thing about that and all those groups is you find your people. And so I'm very happy to be here. I'm very lucky to be in a place that both fosters public interest at a law school and also make the connections that I will need to, because it really does take a village to do the work. So yeah, that's the SparkNotes version. Any questions or anything.
Great. So you mentioned, right, that you didn't go to undergrad with the idea of going to law school. And so you were a few years out, before this, idea really started to plant itself. What were some of the things that you did to kind of get started in your research about law schools? What were some of the things that you prioritized in your law school search? Because, for our guests here, many of them are, at the beginning of this journey, maybe having thought about law school for a while, but maybe not. So what were some of the things that you did to kind of figure out, how to get started in this process? What qualities were important to you in a law school? And how did you go about trying to determine where it would be a good fit for you?
Sure. Well, I'm originally from the Midwest. So I applied to some schools in the Midwest, and I won't name names, but I did call an admissions department. I was like, what is it like there? And they said, well, nothing makes you study more than a winter here. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm not going there. Because I've been in California for most of my life now. And because I started my outreach work here, it was very, very important to me to do the work here. Like the goal was work for LA County, help the people in LA County. So I applied a little bit all over. Southwestern was just the right fit with my financial needs versus my location needs. And like I have family in San Diego, and I could have done that, and it would have been fine. It's still the same ballpark, but LA is my heart and my home, and I just wanted to be here. I was woefully underprepared, because like when you're doing your undergrad, if you have law school in mind, you read up a little about it and get some classes that would better prepare you for it, meet some mentors, some contacts. And I didn't have any of that. I went to the bookstore, and I remember being in between two bookshelves, and I think it was Idiot's Guide to the LSAT and the LSAT for Dummies. And I had to sit there and go, am I an idiot or am I a dummy? Like, which one of these books? So that was my preparation. Like I YouTube tutorials for everything. But yeah, just had to kind of sit down and figure out, okay, what am I doing and why and how? And just through all of that, Southwestern kept coming up as the only answer for me. So very much by choice. I'm here in the heart of LA because that's where I want to work.
Great. So from the time that you picked up either the Idiot's book or the Dummies book,
I think
maybe
it was
both.
Dummies. I think I landed
Maybe
on
both.
Dummy. Yeah.
How far in advance was that to when you showed up at orientation day?
I took it twice.
Okay.
And I encourage everybody to do that. And a lot of people stress out and they go, oh no, like they're going to see that I did it twice and they're going to think, oh, I got a terrible score. I improved by 2 points and here I am. So that was February, and then I want to say July. So I probably started preparing probably right around now, maybe end of July, August for my first LSAT prep.
Okay. So about a year before you started school.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Okay. So again, if anybody in the audience has a question, you can raise your real hand and I can call on you, or you can use the Zoom hand feature. Looks like we have our first question from Danilo.
Yeah, hey, I was gonna ask, you did kind of mention there were some groups you were getting involved in before you started law school, and even just based off the description we were given in the emails and what you just expanded on, it sounds like you were involved in quite a lot. And I was just wondering, can you talk about how you found all these different groups? Like what resources led you to them?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I started off as just like small fry as you could. I live across the street from a 99-cent store. And when I could, I would walk across the street with a duffel bag. I would fill it up with as much water and like granola bars as I could. And there's a couple overpasses around my neighborhood where there's just a big unhoused community. So I would just go and like pass out to whoever I could. And eventually I just started asking for donations from my peers, my friends. And that caught the attention of a group. It was actually like a very feminist centric, like a women's rights oriented group that, like I said, were people that I went to college with. And they invited me to come sit at their table and talk about, community projects and things like that. And it was, I didn't want to take up space, being like the only man there at a women's rights group. I didn't want to be like, oh, this is my project now. But they genuinely asked, what are you working on? How can we help? And that set the stage for the foundation that we ended up creating, where we were completely donation based, but through them, and like I said, through the friends I had from theater school, of all places, we would collect donations. People from that group would come over to my apartment, and we'd set up like a little assembly line thing, and it went from duffel bag full of snacks to an actual sophisticated assembly line where we had like a shopping list of hygiene products and socks and food and water and the right way to package them in the reusable bags that we could then go out. And we were still hitting the same underpasses, the same locations, but it just became a lot more of a well-oiled machine. And I cannot stress this enough. You'll hear me say it a million times while we're talking today, but like, it's your community, it's your people. It is the village you have that creates the success, especially in this kind of work.
That's awesome. Thank you. Again, just thank you for that work. I hope to find a path to similar meaningful work.
Thank you for your question, Daniela. Okay, while others are thinking of questions, what is something that, okay, so I know, Jeff's journey was perhaps a little bit less traditional than some, but is there advice that you would give unilaterally to any prospective law student who is, thinking about doing this, for those that may be a little bit uncertain still, or for those that maybe this is, something they've been aspiring towards for a long time? Is there a piece of advice, something you would say, definitely do before you start law school, or definitely don't do something before you start law school?
Felonies, I would avoid those as a rule.
Always good advice. Yes,
No,
good advice.
Do you mean
It's because you guys are thinking about your moral character application.
Oh my God,
That's
yeah.
what we were talking about before the meeting got started. So I think that's in your consciousness right now.
A little bit. I don't have any felonies, for the record. Do you mean more so for like the general law school journey or for public interest?
Either.
Okay.
Because I think people, okay, let's focus on the public interest side. I think, some people may think it's noble, or maybe have a desire to want to help, but they don't know how to get started. And maybe some of it's a little intimidating. And then they don't know how to do that, maybe necessarily while also being a law student. Or how do you marry that interest with maybe not wanting to actually be a public interest attorney?
Got it.
Right? Because all those things can exist simultaneously.
So the one thing I really struggled with, and I struggled with this in undergrad, which is terrible for an actor, and I struggle with this now, is finding the balance between self-promotion and then feeling like you're self-promoting too much. And with public interest, there's a real danger, and there are some people out there that I'm sure do this because it looks good on a resume, and that's, to each their own. As long as the work's getting done, it's fine. But like, I was very hesitant to be even a little bit perceived as one of the people that's doing the work, to be seen doing the work. So I really pumped my brakes as far as networking and getting my projects out there. And I figured it out about halfway through last year. And I think being a year in quarantine, everybody just went a little, we figured a lot of stuff out. And so I just started saying, help me with this project, help me with this project, help me with this project. And it was this wonderful, freeing sensation where like asking for help made all the difference in the world, because it takes so much to do everyone's project. And Fabiola can attest to this. We're in NLG meetings, we're in HPLP meetings, and people have these great big ideas. And we're like, I don't know if we can do that with just us. But if you put it out there, if you just like shotgun it out into the void, there's going to be somebody that can help. There's going to be somebody that will volunteer to help. And they're not going to think that you're just doing it for clout, or that you're breaking your own arm, patting yourself on the back, which is something I really had to get over with. I did not want that to be my legacy, or my perceived self, or whatever you want to call it. So that took a little work. And I can imagine it's the same thing for law school admissions. I'm here and I hate talking about myself. So this is a little, this even right now is an exercise for me.
all of its learning ground, right? Okay, Elizabeth has a question for us.
Hi, thank you so much for your time. I don't know if you've picked up on this yet, but I can tell how your acting background might benefit you in the legal industry, and just, your presence. You have like quite a command about you.
Well,
So
basically it means I'm going to have to present every group project for the rest of my law school career. That's what it boils down to.
and so this is not the first Southwestern webinar that I've attended, and it was interesting because you said that you were a federal public defender, and I remember Southwestern presented a federal prosecutor who was also alumni. So I find that that's really interesting that, the school has alumni from both sides of the bar or the aisle. I'm not sure what the right way to say that is, but which leads me to my question. Has your association with Southwestern, has it helped achieve things outside of the university or the institution, because you're affiliated with Southwestern? Maybe not an alumni quite yet, but do you follow what I'm getting at?
The Southwestern Mafia. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I get you. Back to networking. Yeah. That's going to be a big, important part of your job search and your networking. My mentor, who like plucked me out of 1L and was like, hey, you want to do public interest, stick with me, you're doing public interest, just said, oh, I'm now at this post-bar position that I think would be perfect for you at a housing clinic. I'll put your name in. And that's a job that I would love to do. I'm still a little like, oh, do I want to public defense? Do I want to do housing rights? But even just having your name in somebody's mouth to put in the room, to put at the table, is a huge help. If you're here for public interest, that's one thing. I know the entertainment industry in this part of town is just like ridden. You can't turn around without bumping into somebody from Southwestern. So there's a lot of alumni out there. In terms of public interest, in terms of like public defenders, I've run into a couple people, and I'm going to say in the field, which sounds weird, but one of our alum is an NLG member who for a long time led the Legal Observer training, which is another program that I strongly recommend if you want to like get out and make an impact on the streets. And she's awesome. And it was cool to see her as a 1L and be like, oh, like, very nice to meet you, very, cordial and polite. And then you get out there on the streets, she's shouting through a megaphone about everybody's rights and like where to go when the police start kettling. And it's like you're shoulder to shoulder with somebody that you respect. And there's no better feeling being in the field, whether that's in court or like on the streets or whatever, knowing that there's somebody by your side or at your back that you trust and respect. So I think in that regard, yeah, the public interest community around here is pretty tight knit. We're pitching ideas. Like I said, if you can't find anybody in your immediate vicinity to help or to, spearhead your project, turn the corner and there's somebody that will. And more often than not, they're somebody that somebody knows through Southwestern, even if they're not necessarily a Southwestern alum.
Thank you.
And I think Elizabeth too, your observation is spot on. Southwestern has a lot of really great concentrations, and even before we formalized having official concentrations, we've always had a lot of students that are really interested in public interest, really interested in social justice, really interested in criminal law, and of course other areas too. Many people come to law school with an idea of something they want to pursue. Jeff is in a unique situation, I think, in that he's kind of maintained the same interest throughout. Many people, get exposed to other things that they didn't even know about, and it can, kind of take them on a different path, even in the short term. So I know the spotlight that you're referring to with that alum that we did with Michael Morris, and he wanted to be a public defender too, and he ended up at the DA's office and then the city attorney's office. It's quite common when students are interested in one of those types of positions that they extern at both, one or the other, or sometimes both. And it's not uncommon that somebody who thought they wanted to be a prosecutor ends up at the public defender's office. It's not, it's the same thing if they think they want to be a public defender and they end up as a prosecutor. I think, it's there's a lot of assumptions, I think, too, before you get into a certain space. And so we give our students the opportunity to really learn what it's like in those areas, and dispel any of the myths that they may have. And, you can still advocate for social change regardless of what side of the aisle you're on.
Just a note on that, I talk a lot of noise about prosecutors, but some of my best friends at Southwestern want to be prosecutors. And like, there's absolutely no one way to do this. And so like some people are going to have to prosecute, white collar prosecutors, sex offense prosecutors, like that. There's a litany of ways that you can seek justice out there. I figured out, and I'm figuring out right now, like I really liked misdemeanors because I wanted to be a public defender because of the criminalization of poverty, and housing is a big part of that. And so I did focus on that for a while, but like I'm in HPLP with somebody who is going a completely different route, and they're doing a more legislative route, and they got an anti-jaywalking bill into legislation, and that's huge, and that's fighting things from top down rather than on a street level. So like, if that's any indication of how many ways there are to do it, even within one perceived way of doing it, yeah, I don't mean to shut down any would-be prosecutors in the room. We need you to just, don't, if I call you, drop the charges, please.
Okay, Daniel, and then Connor.
Yes. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us. I want to ask you, how did you get the public defending job? Was it through OCI? Maybe you could perhaps explain your experience with that, and then I have a follow-up question to that.
Sure. Yeah, totally OCI. The APD is something that I pursued for a long time, and I was really attracted to the complexity of the work, because basically when things move from the public defender to the alternate public defender, that's because there's a conflict of interest. It's usually because it's like a multi-defendant situation and somebody's been represented by the state somewhere along the line. And I thought, cool, that's the hard work. That's the Rubik's Cube. Like I can really, add a couple wrinkles to my brain with that. And the timing just never worked out. So that's why I'm doing it during the fall, and I'm doing it pro bono. I'm not doing it through the externship office or anything. I'm just doing it because I want the experience, and it is counting towards my public service hours for the public service concentration on my JD. But that was all through a table day, which I hope we get a chance to do. With COVID, it's kind of like up in the air, but it's a day where everybody comes, everybody that's going through OCI or PICD, which is the more public interest oriented sort of version of that. They're all there at their table, and you can get a business card. But I found every single one of my jobs through a business card that I got at one of those events.
And what's your follow-up question, Daniel?
Yeah, so the follow-up is regarding what you said. You totally were, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I misunderstood. You said you were totally unprepared. Is that for law school or for the LSAT?
Life in general, mostly, but yeah, both. I didn't know.
I think he was being cheeky about his theater degree.
No,
and not having taken some of the more traditional coursework for law school.
Yeah, and I didn't know if the LSAT was. I thought the LSAT was going to be like basic legal knowledge until I opened my dummies book and was like, oh, it's riddles. Cool, it's mind games. So I was just kind of stumbling my way through it and learning as I went along, and that's why I did want to take it twice. I'm a terrible test taker. Like sitting down for the bar is horrifying to me, but I wanted to take it and go, okay, cool, we've got that under our belt, and then study a little more now that you know what's coming, and then do it again. So when I say I was underprepared, it's just I didn't really know what to expect, even with the practice that I had done.
I see. Do you think that if you spent more time on the LSAT, it would have helped you out in law school, or they're
totally different skills? I mean, they're testing to see if you've got the kind of brain for law school, but like you could take the LSAT 100 times and none of that stuff is going to show up in your torts class,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in a way that's almost good, because it's not like you can spend your whole life studying crim law and then take the LSAT and then ace it and get into law school. They're genuinely testing what kind of brain you got, and if you've got the head for the logical reasoning that you're going to need to write a memo and do legal research and analysis and synthesize everything to hopefully keep somebody out of jail, or put somebody in jail if you're one of the like 3 good prosecutors that I mentioned earlier. You know, it's just that kind of academic work.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Daniel. Connor, your question, please.
Hi, thanks for having me. I was wondering specifically with regards to being an organizer and a law student at the same time, how does one not burn out and die? Because having organized, yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I make it through this year alive. Get different colored pens and a whiteboard that you love, because keeping the schedule is paramount. I was not a very big, like, you know, minute by minute planner before I came to law school. That changed. And especially with organization, I have a wonderful team. My co-chair for PILC, Fabiola, can attest that like the HPLP team is spot on, the NLG team. Like when it comes to organizing, that's a little bit different than your studies, because your studies are on you. Find a good study group. I would not have survived if I did not have like my core study group, which I just met happenstance. Like we all shared a room in the library one day and was like, hey, do you want to keep doing this? And they saved my butt. So that's entirely different from the organizing thing. When it comes to your studies, trust yourself, work hard yourself. But when it comes to organizing, trust your team. And when you can't, you know, walk any further, you get somebody to carry you, and they'd be happy to do it because you're all fighting the same fight. You're all doing the same thing. So I hope that answers your question. And also Post-it notes, like everywhere, Post-it notes.
Thank you.
No.
Melanie, your question, please.
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me. I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but I wanted to ask again, what made you decide to pursue a career in law, given your interest and experience in kind of that community organizing and activism, things that you're involved with? And I guess overarching kind of that why law question, how pursuing a degree in law will connect to those initiatives and interests of yours.
Sure. It felt right is the most basic way I can say it. Like when you think about something and you just can't come to any other conclusion, that's about where I ended up. And this wasn't like a snap to, like I woke up this one morning and was like, oh, I need to be a lawyer. It was being out there on the streets and seeing what we were doing and what we weren't able to do with the tools that we have. And I'm very privileged. I come from a very privileged background. I am like the top of the privilege pyramid here. And I really believe that if you've got power, then you have responsibility to use it. And it just like, it clicked. And there was no other conclusion that like, yeah, man, you've got an ability to do something. So you have the responsibility to do something about it. And so I thought that putting myself out there to represent, you know, through public defense would be like the last line of defense through the decriminalization or for the criminalization of poverty, you know, because it's the old, it's like a stereotype that public defenders are lazy, and they're not, they're overworked. I had a buddy that I worked retail with one time, and he was talking about, he, you know, had a public defender, and his public defender showed up to court in sneakers. And I was like, that, you know, he probably slept in his office because the caseload was so much. So it really, to me, seemed like a boots on the ground thing, and just using everything that I had to put myself in front of the problem that I saw, that in my mind, I wasn't able to do enough without the law degree. I hope that makes sense, but it felt right. It felt like the only logical conclusion to what I was seeing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So Jeff, you mentioned earlier, you know, having this mentor and, you know, that the help that you got in that relationship, you know, how, for those that maybe don't necessarily have a mentor from a professional standpoint, you know, how would you suggest people go about trying to, you know, genuinely and organically build one of these types of relationships that they can then look forward to helping them when they need, some assistance.
Oh, totally. We have the peer mentor program at Southwestern. I forgot to plug that. I'm a peer mentor too. Yeah, so that's one way. And just talking to your mentor and be like, hey man, who do I talk to if I'm interested in XYZ kind of work? And they can really point you in the right direction. And as far as doing it organically, I'm not kidding when I tell you I got scooped up. Like I was at a table day and I was wearing motorcycle boots and my mentor was like, hey, do you ride? And I was like, no, but I have these. And she was like, cool, I ride. You seem pretty cool. Let's talk public interest. And it snowballed from there. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is to just show up, because there's like 12 people that really want to do public interest. We all know each other's faces. Like if you keep showing up to the meetings, like you're one of us, So to say that you only need one mentor, or if you can only find one mentor, I just don't see a world in public interest where that's going to be the case, because like you'll find your people. And whether you're a 1L, 2L, 3L, you're going to find somebody that you can learn from. I have learned from 2Ls. I've learned from 1Ls even in my third year here. So mentorship goes both ways with the mentee. But I would not worry about finding it. Just show up, be there for the work, and somebody will find you.
So for those that don't know, you're actually assigned a peer mentor at orientation. So that's how you go about even speaking to your peer mentor and going from there, as Jeff described. What about a tip for networking? Anything? I mean, I think collectively we probably all agree that networking is so important, but also excruciating and at times awkward. What's something that's worked for you, Jeff, that you think, is good advice for somebody else to try to copy?
I put my whole list of stuff that I do in my email signature. And that's about as brave as I got in my 1L and 2L years for like mentioning what I've done. But that was enough for people to say like, oh, hey, my con law professor said, oh, hey, you're in National Lawyers Guild. We're going to be talking about like police brutality and things like that. Can I call on you? And so that as like a microcosm of what that can do for you, I've had that help me get introduced to like housing fellows and things like that for projects. Somebody, I'm thinking specifically of Michelle here at the public service program, sees that and goes, I have a project for you, and set me up with LACBA to do a super specific informational brochure about tenants' rights for felons that are being discriminated against because they were living with or surviving HIV. Like super specific, but absolutely my wheelhouse. And just having it in my email let Michelle know, like, I have a guy for that. So if you're stage fright, if you're like me and you don't feel comfortable being like, yes, I do this, I am the housing guy, like that felt weird even saying it in jest now. Finding subtle ways to drop your clout, LinkedIn or your email signature are great ways to lead with that. And the folks at the Career Services office will expect you to update your LinkedIn, because that's a great tool for OCI, for PICD, and for those recruiters too. So you can let your digital presence do your networking for you. It's great.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions right now? We have just about 6 more minutes to go. I have a few more if you don't. So in fact, all of our ambassadors, if you want to chime in on this particular question. Sorry, I'm very popular here with the phone. I can get an energy rebate nearly anytime I answer that phone. For those of you, right, our current students here are all going to be graduating next spring, so it's right around the corner. Is there something that, as you're looking towards the future, right, just the shorter term future, a few months out, what is something that is on your law school to-do list before you graduate? So Jeff, I'm going to have you answer first, and then I'm going to go to each of my ambassadors.
Okay, well, it's the moral character application. Like I need to write it down about that.
So everybody needs to do this moral character application, which is for the state bar. And it's like this great big investigation of your life that you have to put forward. so that it can be reviewed and approved so that you can ultimately get your law license. So yes, that has to be on everybody's to-do list. So that aside, is there an experience or just a connection you're hoping to make, or just something else besides the moral character application?
Yeah, two things. One is more of a practical thing, because over the summer, not only was I working remotely, I also didn't get a chance to go to court, even digitally, like formal court. We did trial confirmation hearings and things like that, but I never got to do the big thing because I got all my charges dismissed, which should be like a, but I wanted to be in court. So before I graduate, I would like to have at least one day in there with the APD. The other thing about the APD is they do not hire first-year law students or first-year attorneys because the cases are complex. So just in the back of my mind, I need to beg, barter, and plead for some recommendations. So I'm going to find the professors that have had a more profound impact on my legal education and career, and ask them very nicely if they'll write letters of recommendation or letters about our experiences together that I can then use for applications in the future when I'm applying to county PD.
That's a great plan. Definitely having everything ready before you leave is important. Fabiola, what's something you're looking forward to do before you graduate?
It's like a two-part thing for me, which I'm already kind of in the middle of. But one thing I really wanted to do before I graduate was do a clinic. It always was hard with my schedule, but this semester I made it work. And I'm part of the community lawyering clinic, which is 5 units. It's actually like a lot of stuff. So like that was really my goal. And that goal was, I also had a goal of like having at least one professor that I feel like I can really talk to, that is really going to be there for me, a mentor as well. And she's actually, I like know who I wanted, and she's actually the professor for the community lawyering clinic as well. So for me, it really was great to, be in that clinic, have more like access to her as well, and just build that relationship.
Fantastic. Emily, what about for you?
I think academically, I've hit everything I've wanted to do, but yeah, like I feel like I'm ready for the bar, but I feel like in terms of like things I still want to do, like I really love helping the incoming students. I'm a peer mentor, I am a Dean's Fellow, and I am a editor for the Law Review, and just like interacting with students and like helping them through their first year. And like acclimating them is just something that I'm looking forward to continuing to do this year before I leave, and like hopefully bestow some wisdom on the next class that's going to graduate. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Thank you, Emily. And Armand.
Fabiola, Emily, and Jeff all touched on very important things like communication and wrapping up our academic journeys. But I think personally, I just want to finish what I started in law school, which was you start strong, so you should finish strong, in my opinion, because once you finish your studies in law school, you start your studies again for the bar, and that's like where the real goal is. So I think just wrapping up everything is my goal now, and then transitioning to bar studying come July and June and take the test.
All good plans. Okay, so we have just about 3 more minutes. So if there's a final question from any of our guests, now would be the time. So I think we touched upon just about everything in Jeff's background. I think we've covered pretty much everything, but if there's
one question in the chat.
Yeah, are you talking about Celeste's? What ways did you prepare as you transitioned into your 3L?
Ooh, I took like a 2-week nap after 2L.
Only 2 weeks?
That's all I had after I finished work. Yeah, because it felt like, oh, you're done with your work, and then you got to do your first week reading assignments. And I'm being glib, but at the same time, like that, you can't burn out. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So, I know you're probably looking for an answer more like, I read these books or listen to this podcast or like talk to this professor or whatever. Actually, that's a lie. I talked to Zach down at the counseling office, who really helped me take what I learned from my summer experience and go, oh yeah, this is what you didn't get out of that. Take these classes, and really help me set me up for success for both of my semesters. And then also that nap thing, because that's probably the last good sleep that I've had.
Well, I think it is important, all of our students are collectively so busy. Finding that balance is really, really, really important. You really probably can't underscore that enough. And I think, that's what some of the questions today were also geared towards, right? How to do all the different things and get to that end goal, as Armand talked about, right? You came in wanting to get that law degree, so you got to make it all the way through, and you got to get on the other side of the bar exam. So, you guys are all actually in the home stretch. And I know the year is going to go by amazingly for each of you. Jimmy did not have a question, but he said a shout out to his fellow theater performance undergrad.
Solidarity.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close out tonight with Jeff having any final remarks for the group. Any last bits of wisdom that you'd like to impart?
I do not want to hold myself out as an expert on any of this. Anything that I've said, take it with an enormous grain of salt, because everybody's experience is going to be different. Feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. I'll put my email in the chat if that's okay. But really, everybody does this differently, and everybody does this in a way. You'll figure out a way that works for you. And my last nugget of advice is just be messy and figure out that way that works, and don't feel bad if you don't figure it out right away, because eventually you'll get there and eventually it'll be great. And you're all coming to law school for a reason. If you're here, it's probably public interest oriented, and we need you. So figure it out, do it at your own pace, and enjoy the ride.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you to everyone and all of our ambassadors tonight. Thank you for spending this bit of time with us, and we wish you luck and hope you stay safe and well. Take care, everyone.